Welcome to Season 11, Episode 10 recap, everybody. So this was a pretty interesting episode. A lot of drama, a lot of action, and to be honest, it's an episode I was kind of afraid to air because I knew what happened in this time frame, and it was a little emotional, to be honest. But it was good. It was a pretty good edit. I didn't look as bad as I thought I would, since I've had so long to think about everything that happened, and the suspense of not knowing what the hell's going to make it on TV is kind of, can be bad at times. But so I'm going to start on myself and just bust through some stuff I want to make sure that I get out so I don't forget. So we got the fashion show. So there was a weird thing that happened during that. So you heard that I mentioned Callie Russell, her fashion show, but right before I said that, I also said Jordan Jonas. I think I said Jordan Jonas, the fashion mogul, or something along those lines. I did it a couple different times, and yeah, that's the take they ended up using. But I don't know if my microphone cut out or what the hell happened, but Jordan definitely deserves credit for starting fashion shows in the show, and he was the originator of it. He got credit. For some reason it didn't get edited in, but appreciate you, Jordan. I love that fashion show. That was a groundbreaking alone moment on season 6 where you started that. I made this hat right here out of squirrel, and I sewed it using the awl on my Swiss Army and a bone. I had two different sewing needles. One was made from burbot and one was from pike, like a rib bone, the biggest rib bone in both of the fish. The burbot one worked really, really good. And I just carved a little hole in it to use for putting the thread through. But this hat was very, very warm. And it's actually that orange scarf you see tucked into my sweater in the episode. That's what this hat's made from. So I just sewed it into a hat shape, and it worked really good. It was probably my warmest hat out there, but I never ended up wearing it that much. But it still has that amazing alone smell to it, the smoked fish smell. But there's my hat. All right, so the next thing I want to clear up is my gill net that I lost to the river. Now you can see where they show it. That gill net was absolutely not left in the water. I went there. What happened was, you see how the netting is all pulled up in the shot that it shows. It's because I tried to pull it all out of there, and it started tearing and ripping. So I ended up going back there and cutting it out of there. So there was no gill net left in the water to catch fish that I just abandoned. That did not happen, and I've heard it mentioned already. So yeah, I'm smarter than that, and I respect wildlife a lot more than that. So that gill net did come out of that river. It was just a pain in the ass, and by the time it did come out, it was torn to shreds, and I knew I was just gonna have to make another one. And honestly, the second gill net I made so fast. If it took an hour, I'd be really surprised. It wasn't huge, but it was something. And I knew in the lake that I put it was shallow, and the whole lake was actually really shallow. So, but there was fish in there. I saw before it froze, but there wasn't a ton of fish in there, and clearly not huge fish. I mean, I fished the hell out of that lake. It didn't show how much I fished it, but I fished it for days on end. I had all sorts of stuff deployed in that lake, but it was fruitless. So fortunately, I made a violin that worked pretty good, and I sang a couple songs and got a little emotional out there. And I was really actually worried about that video seeing the light of day. I remember doing that, and I'm like, oh shit. I just sang hours worth of songs, and you can hear me say, oh, beep, and then reach to turn the camera off, because I was like, son of a bitch, they're going to air that for sure. There's no doubt in my mind. They're going to air that, and of course they did. But I knew it was going to. But it was, yeah, I was singing about like how much I miss food and whatnot. And then before I knew it, I was singing about how I miss my mom, and it just kind of came. But it's realistically, it's good to let that stuff out there versus hold it in and dwell on it, because that's what's going to kill you. I mean, if you hold all those emotions in and don't say anything to anybody, like on camera, it's going to eat you alive. So in my opinion and little bit of survival experience out there so far, it's like the only way to move past hard emotions is to talk about them, and then start kicking butt again. So that's what I did. I tried to be as open. I say it in the episode, but I try to be as open and honest as I can with the camera. And it's just one of the strategies I ended up using to like push through the hard times, because it's getting pretty hard out there at this point. I think there's 16, 17, 18 hours of darkness by this point, which is a lot. You want to talk about seasonal depressive syndrome, or whatever the hell you call that, where you don't see the sun at all. Like in one part in the episode, you can see the sun. I go out there on a shiny, bright morning, and the sun's just kicking over the top of the trees. That was literally as high as the sun got. It got up to that point. The sun shined for like maybe an hour, just that high in the sky, and then it dips back down and goes below the tree line where I could never see it. So that was the height of the amount of sun that I would get on a daily basis, which is crazy. And after that, it's just boom, back to darkness. So I was, spending a lot of time singing and playing songs on that violin and whatnot. Eventually, I do get on the river, catch a really large pike that was well over 40 inches, 30 plus pounds. That fish was insane. And when that thing hit the ice, there was no way I could control my emotions, because I had the weight of the world resting on me. Like my alone journey is done. Like I don't know how much more time I would have given myself, probably quite a bit, but to have the burden of not having a bunch of food stored up lifted in one moment when I reached down there and grabbed the gill of that pike and pulled it out of that hole, that was something else. That's a moment in my life that I will never ever forget. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, it's just a fish, but it's a fish that saved my entire mental game, and it allowed me to eat so much. And if you don't eat a lot of food when it's this cold, you're not going to be able to stay warm. You just can't. The food is what your body burns to generate the heat, and we're hitting some seriously cold temps, and food is what keeps you warm. So that's enough about me, and we're going to move to Timber, who has some shelter issues in this one. I mean, potential like burned down shelter situation, which is, you want to talk about a scary worst case scenario on the show, that's about as bad as it can get. Your shelter going up in flames is, in this temperature, is a catastrophe, and you're almost for sure done. I had a game plan if that happened to me. You can see that there's a little woodshed there's a woodshed on the right side of my shelter. I store wood in there, and it's sort of a wind block by my door. But there's another one off to the side of it, and I had a game plan of, I'm going to find every damn spruce bough I can, throw it on top of that, and if my shelter burns down for some reason, that's going to be my new shelter while I decide what the hell is going to happen. But I played a burned down shelter through my head thousands of times out there. I'm like, well, what am I going to do if this happens? What am I going to do if this happens? What the hell is this and that? And try to figure out ways that I could pull myself out of whatever situation. But the shelter, so anyway, I don't need to get too wild and off on a tangent, but Timber had some issues. Seems like he's got it fixed. His shelter's going to be a little bit smoky, but yeah, seems safer, so that's good. So for me, in this episode, the absolute highlight of it all was Timber's bass guitar. He got the first ever alone hit single, "If You Find My Body." That was so good, Timber. Like I saw that, and I was gonna call Timber, but I'm like, well, he might not have seen that yet, so I didn't. So I texted him, and I think I think my text involved a few profane words and timber exclamation point, smiley face, thumbs up, something along those lines. There was profanity and there was emojis, is what I'll tell you. But I was so happy to see that. I just rolled on the floor laughing, and well, more like I twisted and turned in my hammock because I was not on a floor. But anyway, I appreciated that video a lot, Timber. That was bad to the bone, man. I loved it. And then he also gets visited by a wolverine, which is pretty intense. Hopefully he can control that situation. And it's funny that Timber, William, and I all have extremely different strategies to control to maintain our mental stability, if you will, out there. We're all starting to hit a point here where the mental game's really kicking in hard. But we're all doing it a little bit differently. I don't know if there's a good way to really train for it without just watching it and trying to deduce what other previous contestants have done to maintain. But until you're in the situation, there's no way. You just can't understand what that's like. I mean, they'll come to pick up the SD cards and give you new batteries, but you're not talking to them. They won't respond, and it's brutal. It's like getting a tease of people, but you don't get the satisfaction of interacting like you would with a normal situation. So it's it almost makes it worse. But they do have to come and do the med checks and pick up the batteries and bring you new batteries and get the SD cards safe and sound out of the woods. So yeah, things are getting a little tricky out there, and we have 2 more episodes coming up. I think it's a double header next Thursday. It's all gonna come down to this, baby. So we'll move on to William. William he gets some fish. He's looking really good out there. And he has, my favorite moment of William's situation was he made that ice box, a literal ice box out of river ice. And Sassy comes, and he films Sassy like poking around trying to get in there, and it can't. I thought that was hilarious and really good that he filmed that. It's one of those moments that it could happen when you don't have a camera running, but I'm glad he had it because it was a big deal. It was like the end of the Sassy story arc, and I really appreciated that moment when Sassy got locked out and then it just scampers away, and then like, haha, William, victory for the 1 for William, 0 for Sassy, I guess. But it was so hilarious. William's just grinding through, being William, and doing a lot of cool stuff, hanging in there. Just he's getting a little, if I'm being completely honest, he's getting a little trickier to understand. But I can understand him because I've talked to William quite a bit, but let's be honest, even I can't understand him that much anymore, so I'm glad those subtitles exist. But I love William. Even when I talk to him, like in base camp and boot camp and whenever, I still have to focus a little bit. I love William, man. Who doesn't? Who could not love William? But he's kicking butt. I don't want to try to like dig into the mentalness of other contestants because only they know that. So that's why I'm not gonna take that on when it comes to Timber and William, because I can only say what the hell is going on in my mind. But there's a lot going on. There's one thing that stands out to me that was a really huge pain in my ass, and it's right about this point in the show where I had a particular song stuck in my head that would not shut up, day and night, all night long, like a fever dream. This song's playing in my head. It was wild, and the way that I ended up getting that song out of my head was singing and playing on the violin and in doing something to try to like come up with a catchier tune, I guess, or whatever. But the mine was really starting to do some wild stuff without seeing very much sun and without seeing much daylight in general. And it was one hell of an episode. A lot of stuff went down in it, and a lot of drama on my end. I really let it go in this episode, and yeah, there's not much else to say about that. But I appreciate you guys watching this. Hopefully that solves some things. It solves a couple of things that I wanted to like at least get out there about, mainly about the gill net being left in the river, which it was not. And I wanted to make sure that Jordan got proper credit for originating the Alone Fashion Show, and that got cut out of my edit for whatever reason. But yeah, I thank everybody, and make sure you go to Timber's channel, Timber Cleghorn. William Larkham Jr., Big Land Trapper is his YouTube name, and Dusty Blake, Peter Albano. All right, I appreciate you guys. I'll see you after the show is done airing.